Welcome to the Ultralight Airplane Workshop. My name is Leon. Let's prepare for some carbon fiber wet layup. This video got a little bit too long, so I've decided to cut it up into two parts. This will be the first part, preparing for some carbon fiber wet layup. The second part will actually be doing the wet layup. I apologize for the focus problem in this video. I figured out what the issue was, and hopefully we won't have that problem anymore. The reason I want to do this wet layup of carbon fiber is twofold. It's been about 20 years since I did any wet layup, so I'd like to get myself re-familiarized with the wet layup process, and that was fiberglass. And carbon fiber is a little bit different, at least as far as visually verification that you've wetted out the cloth. The other reason I want to do this is I want to make a test sample that I can compare against some aluminum. I've got a piece of some 16 thousandths aluminum, 16 thousandths of an inch, a mil. And you metric guys keep using the word mil, meaning millimeter, but mil actually means a thousandth of an inch. But I want to compare the carbon fiber to this aluminum. This aluminum had been used as sheeting the outside skin of the Hummel Ultra Cruiser. So I'd like to find out how well some similar thickness carbon fiber compares to this aluminum for stiffness and some shear. Another comparison I want to do is weight. So I want to make them both the same size and length and width, and that will be 12 inches. So I've cut myself out a template that's 14 inches on a side. That'll leave me an inch of play to trim to, so I can trim to my 12 inches. Let's talk a little bit about this carbon fiber. Okay, this carbon fiber is 13 threads per inch. The yard size is 3K, so there are 3,000 little threads per toe, and toe is going to be a thread going through here. The weight is 6 ounces per square yard, which is 240 grams per square meter. And this is a 2x2 twill. Now a 2x2 twill, as you can see in the photo, the thread goes over 2 threads and then under 2 threads and then over 2 threads. It does that both in the 0 direction and the 90 degrees direction. So that's not a plane weave. A plane weave would be over 1, under 1, over 1, under 1. So this is seconds. This is also commercial grade. It's not what would be used for structures. This is more commonly used for cosmetics. Makes something look attractive. The twill weave is very popular for that. A nice thing that Composite Envisions does is, as you can see along the edge of this fabric, they put some tape on here. That helps to keep it from unraveling. Another thing that they do is very nice is they do not fold it, so you do not get creases in the fabric. Every order that you make, they put it on a roll. Let's find out how thick this is. We've got some digital calipers here, and we'll just put it on here dry. So right now it's saying it's 9 thousandths of an inch, 9 mils. So let's cut out 2 pieces of carbon fiber. Now I'm going to cut these on a 0 and 90 degree bias. So this is 0 degrees, so I'm going to cut an edge in 0 direction and 90 degrees. For shear strength, you would want your carbon fiber to be in a 45 degree bias, plus and minus 45 degrees. In that case, you would cut it like this. So 45 degrees, 45 degrees. And that's actually pretty easy to do, because if you look at the weave, the twill pattern makes it very easy to see the 45 degrees. So let's cut our 14-inch piece, which will give us an inch extra that we'll trim off after the part is cured. As I mentioned in the unboxing video, the sizing on your various fabrics, in this case it's going to be 4 kinds of fabrics: carbon fiber, fiberglass, another fabric that is called Enegra. Imagine that all of these have different sizing, so I will have different scissors for each kind of fabric. I wish I had some of those cutting tables like they do in the fabric store to make this a little bit easier. Now, as you may notice, this fabric can change its shape quite easily. Let's see if I can do it and kind of exaggerate how it goes. But you can see that it quite easily changes its shape. It also does that in the third dimension also, which is great when you're laying up on a curved piece. It's not so great when you're trying to cut it because it moves around and you lose your straight line. Now, as you can probably see here, this is unraveling, which is another good reason to cut it a little bit oversized, so you don't have to worry about the fabric unraveling past where you want it to trim later. Okay, I got my two pieces of carbon fiber here. Now I'll roll these back up. Try to keep them from getting dirty and to keep the samples nice and straight. Let's talk about the next piece of fabric that I'm going to cut. Peel ply is a polyester fabric. What we will do is apply this to the top of the two carbon fiber layers that we're going to wet lay up. There are at least two reasons for putting the peel ply on top of the carbon fiber. One is that if we have excess epoxy in our carbon fiber, the peel ply will wick some of that up, and we can get some to be pushed through if we roll the peel ply, press it into the top of the carbon fiber. And you want to do that because if your carbon fiber has excess resin in it, it will be weaker. The other reason for using the peel ply is once you remove the peel ply after the epoxy has cured, it leaves a rough finish. And you can use this rough finish instead of having to sand the carbon fiber in order to paint, or to put another layer of carbon fiber on, or to glue something to the carbon fiber. Let's talk about the specifics of this particular peel ply that I have. There's nothing special about this one. I just kind of got a generic cheap peel ply. But this is 2.6 ounces per square yard, 60 inches wide. And the brand name is Aerotech Econo Stitch peel ply, and the model number from Composite Visions is 1311. Okay, now I want the peel ply to extend past the edges of the carbon fiber. So I'm going to use the same template I used to cut out the carbon fiber, but I'm going to extend out about an extra inch around each edge. Another thing I'm going to do that I talked about before is I'm using different scissors on the peel ply than I use to cut the carbon fiber, so the sizings won't interfere with each other and make the scissors sticky. Okay, I'm going to roll this up like I did the... let's take this tape off here. Again, I'm using my gloves so I don't get any oils on my peel ply. It's not quite as important on the peel ply as it is on the carbon fiber, but I'm going to keep doing it. Now you may notice that on this peel ply, it doesn't unravel on the ends quite as easily as the carbon fiber did, but it will unravel some, particularly when you go to peel it off. Okay, let's roll this up. Okay, next step is to prepare our mold. Now in this case, a mold is just a little piece of door that I have from Home Depot. So what I've done is it had a little bit of texture on it, so I've sanded it down with some 400 grit wet and dry sandpaper. What we will do is we'll put down a wax layer, several wax layers first, and then we'll put down PVA, polyvinyl alcohol, which is the release agent. And you don't have to renew the wax every time, although you should do it every once in a while. But the PVA is a single use, so every time you pull a part off and you want to put another part in the mold, you have to put a new layer of PVA. Now PVA is water soluble, so it's easy to wash off, so that's nice. So let's put some wax on here. All right, here's the cleaning wax that I'm going to use. See if we can get it to focus. There we go. Now let's read the directions here. Rub wax thoroughly into clean surface of mold. Allow wax to remain on mold until moderately dry. The wax will appear hazy, apparently, in that condition. Once it's moderately dry, buff with cleaning towel until clear, high gloss appears. Buff entire mold surface with cleaning towel. And then it says, note, use 2 to 3 coats wax on first application only. Rebuff and wax as necessary. Let's get started. The rag I'm going to use to wipe this wax on is called painter's rags. They're just scrap rags I imagine they got from a garment factory somewhere. I would not recommend using these blue paper towels, or probably even white paper towels. I've learned over time, especially if there's a solvent involved, and of course this wax does have some solvent in it, is that there's a residue in these towels that would be left behind. You can see that easily if you're trying to clean off some aluminum and you're using these towels with alcohol. You'll have kind of a weird white or bluish haze left behind on the surface, so I would not recommend using these. I'm going to cover this entire surface because in the future we'll be using this to make more samples, and some of them could be large. So I'm going to, even though we're only using about a foot by foot area, I'm going to cover the whole thing. Just as a reference, let's find out what the shop temperature and humidity are. I got a little gizmo over here that I can use. In fact, I'll take a photo of it. Okay, I took a photo of the temperature and humidity. The shop stays at pretty much the same temperature all the time. All right, let's let that dry. All right, sorry about the humming in the background, but that's the air conditioner. We'll just have to live with that for now. Looks to me like it's pretty much dry already. It's only been 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and buff this off with a clean cloth. I've buffed this first coating of wax, and it's not shiny, but it's got a little bit of a semi-gloss on it now. So I think it's doing the right thing. I'm going to let this harden up just a little bit more, and then I will put on the second coat. Well, it's been a half hour since I buffed the first layer, and pardon the noise in the background with the air conditioners running. And I'm going to start on the second layer. So we'll put down the second layer of wax. Now in this case, I'm going to use the same rag that I did when I put down the first layer. Don't know that's the right thing to do, but that's what I'm going to do. Okay, it looks like this layer's on. Now that first layer dried pretty fast, so I believe on this layer, I'll probably wait no more than 5 minutes. All right, it's been about 5 minutes since the second coat went on, and I am now going to buff it off. I'm going to use a clean rag for each of these buffing sessions. Just to kind of explain what I'm feeling here as I'm doing this, I can feel that it's dry, and as I'm taking off the excess, it's pushing kind of hard. But once I come back over where I've removed the excess, you can buff it. It moves much smoother, and you can see it starting to shine up once you've buffed it. So it looks much better. So I will continue doing that for the rest of this, for the second coat. It's possible that I'm putting too much on here initially. For this third coat, I might try starting with a little bit less initially and see how that works out. Okay, here we go for the buff. Okay, it looks pretty good. All right, so on that first coat, I left it for half an hour to dry after I buffed it. I'm going to try that again before I put on the third coat, and I think we'll stop at 3 coats. It has been a half hour since I finished buffing the second coat, and now it's time to put on the third coat. On this third coat, I'm going to experiment with not putting quite as much on. I will apply it enough that I can see that the previous finish is now dulled. I'm going to consider that good enough for this third coat. See how well that goes. I think that might be the way to do it. Not put quite as thick of a coat on. Okay, we will let that dry just a little bit for 5 minutes, then we'll come and buff it off. Okay, it's been a little over 5 minutes since I applied the third coat of wax onto our flat mold. I'll get a clean cloth and we will buff this third application. Here we go. Oh yeah, certainly putting the third application on thinner instead of as thick as I had been, I can get to the buffing faster. Wiping off a little bit easier, getting a little bit of a shine. I believe I'm happy with that. It feels nice and smooth, just rubbing this cloth over it. It doesn't have a lot of shine, but the surface that I started with wasn't very smooth. It still had 400 grit scratches in it and a little bit of the original texture on there. But I believe that this will suffice. We will find out. It's starting to get a little late in the evening, so I believe I will call it a night. And tomorrow we will put the PVA layer on this. I'll have to read the instructions on how to do that because it's been a long time since I applied PVA. If any of you out there are experienced in applying wax to a mold and using PVA, I'd be interested in what your method is for applying the wax. So if it doesn't take too much time, go ahead and put a comment down in the comment section for this video and tell me how you apply the wax. Okay, it's been about 24 hours since I put the last coat of release wax on my flat mold, and now it's time to put some PVA release film on the mold. I mentioned it in the unboxing video that I'm using this film number 10 Part All from Rexco. See if we can get that focused. Here we go. Now, there's two ways they talk about applying the PVA. One is to brush it on using a foam brush. Another one is to spray it on. Now, the last time I tried PVA 20 years ago, I was very unhappy with the foam brush application method. And they don't even recommend using a fiber brush at all. The foam brush wasn't bad, but it left little ridges in there that were very difficult to remove. I've watched a few videos on how to apply PVA with the spray, and that's not too bad. The procedure is to put a very light mist coat on first, let that cure or dry out, and that takes roughly 10-15 minutes, and then you put on a heavier coat. You let that one dry for anywhere between 15 minutes and 45 minutes, depending on your current conditions, and then you put a second coat on and let that completely dry. Then you're ready to do your layup. Well, all those spray guns that they use, of course, are the air spray guns. And I'd rather not do that in this shop. So I'm experimenting with these little guys. These are little sprayers that you use for a cleaner or something like that. Oops, get that back there. Now I've done a little bit of experimenting with this, and it's not great. It doesn't atomize as much as I would like for it to, and it does have some drips that come out right at the nozzle and come down. So I'm going to try the first mist coat and see how that works. I'm going to keep the edge of the sprayer out past the edge of my board so that I don't get any drips on it directly. So we'll give that a shot. Well, that didn't work at all. The PVA is thicker than water, and it's not atomizing very well, so I'm going to have to resort to a foam brush after all. Well, I've already put a nice little thin layer on here. I have about a 1.5 inch foam brush, and I'm just going to spread this thin layer out. What happened with the spray bottle is it just put great big drops out. And I tried to come back, reduce the or screw the nozzle in a little bit so that it wouldn't put out the big drops, be more likely to atomize, but that did not work. Now, looking down here at this, I can see that we're having a little bit of a problem with surface tension. It's not giving me a nice smooth application. I'm just going to keep working this as it begins to dry, see what we can get. Now I can see right now it's not going to give me a smooth application, although it is getting a little bit better as I go. I'm having a problem with surface tension, keeping it from being smooth. I'm guessing that's why they want a thin coat when you spray initially. They talked about if you put on a thick coat initially, you'll get fisheye, which I'm guessing is what I'm seeing here. And I'm going to have to do a little bit of work to avoid that as this dries a bit. believe we're going to let this dry for about 10 minutes. Then we'll come back and put a thicker coat on. Well, it's been 35 minutes since I start letting this first coat dry. So I'm going to put on a second coat that's heavier than the first coat. And by the way, I'd like to point out, on this first coat, when I look at it very closely, I can see little pinholes that did not get filled with the PVA. And I thought that could happen because when I was putting it down, I could see there was a surface tension issue. And I believe that's what they call the fisheye effect. And so that's covering, that's over 2 to 3% probably of the area that I've got these little spots that look like it didn't get covered. So I'm hoping on the second thicker coating, it'll get covered. Let me turn on my fan and we'll get going. Now I put this little piece of plastic over the nozzle of my spray bottle so that the PVA would not dry on the nozzle in between coats. So here we go. So once again, it's coming out in big drops. Okay, the first brushing left more fish eyeing, quite a bit of it, which I'm very disappointed in that. But the second brush, 90 degrees to the first, appears to be far better. This third coat, or sorry, third brushing, the second time at 90 degrees, or 0 degrees if you'd like to call it that, appears to be pretty good. It appears that this coat is soaking into that first coat a little bit, and what is happening is the two coats are getting thick. So I'm going to put a little bit more on here, a little bit thicker. Let's try this again. Okay, fish eyeing is clearly an issue this time. There's one there, some there and there. This is clearly a problem. Still getting the fish eyeing in places here. I'm going to let this, yeah, it's really bad along this edge over here. I'm going to let this get a little tackier and wipe it one more time. Okay, I'm going to do another swipe along here. Other than the fish eyes, I like the way this layer looks. Pretty even coat. I mean, I can still see brush marks, but other than that, it looks pretty good. Okay, I still see fish eyes occurring here, but I'm going to let this dry now. And I'm going to let this dry even farther than that first coat dried. Now this is thicker, so just by itself that'll take longer. So I will check this in an hour and see how it looks. All right, it's been overnight since I put on the third coat of the PVA. I had waited an hour and a half for the second coat to dry and came out, and the second coat was just slightly tacky, so I thought, well, let's go ahead and try the third coat. I should have waited a little bit longer. It was almost dry enough, but not quite. So the third coat dissolved some of the second coat, and so they kind of got mixed together. Another thing that happened, and I could see it starting with the second coat, is I got a large number of just small bumps. Now I can't tell what they are. They could have been some of the foam brush breaking apart and staying behind. It could have been small air bubbles. Maybe I was getting some outgassing from the PVA or from the mold release. I just don't know. But for this test sample of carbon fiber I'm going to make, this is good enough. We're going to go ahead and try this. Another thing I want to do when I get the carbon fiber peeled off is measure the thickness on this PVA and see what it turned out to be. On a first application of PVA on a fresh mold, it's supposed to be between 2 and 4 mils. I'm going to measure it and see what we got. But for what we're doing here, this will be fine. But it's not going to be fine for a finished product. So now I'm ready to put down some carbon fiber, do some wet layup. Part 2 of the video will be the wet layup of the carbon fiber. Look down in the description of this video for links to the Ultralight Airplane Workshop's Facebook, Patreon, and website.